Good evening. Welcome to Iowa News and Views. Title of the show tonight is Holiday Shopping with a Conscience. My name is Gary Sanders, guest host, and with me tonight are Dorothy Higdon from Cedar Rapids, from the United Methodist Women, and James Tracy, University of Iowa graduate student with the National Labor Committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dorothy, why don't we start with you? When we say holiday shopping with a conscience, how are the United Methodist Women involved, and specifically you?
Well, I got involved because the United Methodist Women are concerned about issues that relate to women and children, and we received information on the holiday season of conscience a year ago, and then again this year with the People's Right to Know campaign and I Care shopper cards to give. We don't really know where the products come from, and that's part of the issue, to help people know where their products are made, and that industry-wise, 50 to 60% of our clothing is imported. Some companies, it's even larger than that.
Mm-hmm. So when you say the People's Right to Know campaign, that concerns shoppers trying to know where their products are made. And this focuses on clothing products that are made in the third world? Primarily
clothing products. Toys and sports equipment and shoes are also a part of the campaign and a part of the things that are made in the third world. And this emphasis this year is focusing on Walmart and asking them, because they're a leader in the retail industry in the world, mm-hmm. if they wouldn't share where their products are made with the public, so that the public has an honest view of where things come from.
Mm-hmm. And also involved in this, besides religious groups, is a group called the National Labor Committee. And James, you're with the National Labor Committee. What exactly is the National Labor Committee, and how did you get involved with that?
Well, the National Labor Committee is a human rights organization based out of New York City, and is affiliated with the People of Faith Network, which is a group of religious organizations throughout the United States. And they're a modestly sized human rights groups that they conduct their own studies. Not only have they conducted a study recently at a number of Walmarts throughout 12 states this past summer, but they also have conducted studies in Central America. If you recall 1996, what took place when Kathy Lee Gifford was surreptitiously reminded that her clothing line, about 90% of her clothing line, was manufactured by child laborers in El Salvador. Other countries as well. The National Labor Committee brought it to the attention of her that her products were made in El Salvador under tremendously egregious conditions. Mm-hmm. So that's perhaps what they're most noteworthy for, is that particular incident. And that has brought in the federal government. Robert Reich, when he was Secretary of Labor, he was involved, and of course he stepped down, but there's still, the federal government is still attempting to bring about some sort of a thing where there is a partnership, an alliance between businesses and human rights groups.
Mm-hmm. Well, James, are you a paid staffer for this National Labor Committee, or what? How exactly are you involved?
No, I'm a volunteer, mm-hmm. in the sense that I pay for my membership, mm-hmm. and that's primarily how the National Labor Committee's $323,000 per year budget is accrued.
So is this funded by the AFL-CIO or anything? It says National Labor Committee. What's,
no, actually only 13% of, that's 13% of all of their funds are received from labor organizations, mm-hmm. but most of them are received from religious organizations and so mm-hmm. forth, and private members as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dorothy, the United Methodist Women and this People's Right to Know campaign, is this going on all over the country, or just in Iowa, or what's happening
It's
here?
supposed to be all over the country. We chose in Iowa to make an emphasis of this at our annual meeting in October, and encouraged people from Iowa to be involved, and if nothing more, to go home and read the labels and be aware of where their products come from.
And you said Walmart is the focus.
Walmart is the focus for this year, to ask them, not as a boycott, but to ask them to be responsible to the American public and let them know where their products are made and be honest. One of the
How are they? Excuse me. How are they not honest?
well, their advertising would say they're made in America. Then you read the small print whenever the price is better, or that type of thing. And the surveys that he mentioned showed that like 89%, something like that, in those 12 states
Yeah.
came from other countries in the way of clothing apparel.
Yeah, what the National Labor Committee did was they went out and looked at 92,000 different articles, clothing, accessories, and footwear. And they concluded that despite Walmart's claims of bring it back to the USA or made in the USA, this patriotic sloganeering, actually 85% of the products were made overseas, not in the United States. And we can safely conclude that in most of the countries that Walmart does business in, China makes up a bulk of it. Dorothy has a report that the National Labor Committee put out with regard to China. Now, China is really a dream when it comes to suppliers and so forth, because they're virtually a dictatorship, and yet they do permit corporations to come in and use the labor. However, it's very difficult to get human rights groups to go in and to be able to get beyond the government restrictions and so forth to actually conduct surveys, to conduct inspections of the workplaces in China.
Dorothy, weren't you in China?
Yes, we visited China in 1996 as a part of a mission study tour. And one of the areas we visited was the Guangdong province, which is just inland from Hong Kong. We had spent 5 days in Hong Kong, and Christians in Hong Kong were sharing about concerns that people in Hong Kong had lost their jobs because they'd moved into that area of China. And this is where China has established economic zones, secure economic zones or something like that,
Free trade zone.
which are free trade zones.
Okay.
And when we were in Fushan, which is in Guangdong province, the Christians there at the church shared about being concerned about what was happening to all the workers that were coming in from the rural areas. They're called migrant workers. They have to have special permits to be in the city where they live. They're basically housed in dormitories, sometimes only 6 to a room, but often 10 or 12 to a room, where they're sometimes sharing two people sharing the bed, this type of thing. And those housing units are in connection with the factories. And the last report I had from the China Christian Council's newsletter was that the church is having more and more of the young women coming to them for help because they don't get enough wage.
James, let me ask you, have you either been to China or any of these other third world countries that have these factories which are supplying us?
No, actually not. I've been involved in this stateside for the past year and a half or so, and not directly with the National Labor Committee, but previously I was a graduate student at the University of Arizona, and co-founded the Students Against Sweatshops chapter there, where we were opposing the university's alliance with the Nike Corporation based on the same types of labor violations that Walmart is being criticized for.
So you never went to the any of the maquiladoras, the factories on the Mexican side of the U.S.-Mexico border where a lot of these products are being made?
No, not as of yet.
Okay.
There is a group in Tucson, because Tucson is only about 60 miles away from the Mexican border, and the Peoples of Faith Network that we were doing work with did go down there and regularly conducted worked with folks in the maquiladoras and so forth.
Well, let me just ask you something. Walmart is the focus this year, this holiday season. It's the largest retailer in the world. As I understand it, their sales last year were about $118 billion. $118 billion.
That's more than the gross national product of, or gross domestic product of most of the countries in the world.
Really? So we are talking about a gigantic economic enterprise that is all over the world, with factories, workers, people making how much an hour in factories that are supplying. Any idea?
12 to 20 cents an hour. And I charted for another program that I'm going to be doing that in China the wages run from 13 cents to 20 cents an hour. And these are 10-hour days. Sometimes they're 16 or 24-hour shifts. And they are asking for a living wage, which would be 87 cents an hour. That would be basic subsistence salary. In Haiti, it's probably 28 cents an hour, and Nicaragua, 23 cents an hour.
I mean, if we could figure this out, let's say a Gap sweater costs $20, $40, I don't know, whatever. How many weeks would one of these workers have to work to just be able to afford one sweater that they were turning out hundreds a day of?
It will be, I can't do the math right off the top of my head, but it will be several weeks.
It would be a lot.
It will be a great deal of
I
time.
mean, an incredible amount.
Most of the workers, and Dorothy, I'm sure, can attest to this, most of the workers have no conception of what they're actually, what they're actually producing. They might be producing for instance, licensed apparel for NFL teams or for a university football team or something of the like. They have no conception of where it's being sold, of what it's being used for, and of how much it's being sold for. And when they are told, they're certainly taken aback.
And it's also my understanding that most of the people that they are hiring are these young women of about 15 years of age. Now, why is this? Any idea?
Well, the young women, is 90% of the workforce in many of these countries that are manufacturing, the plants that are manufacturing apparel. The women make the most malleable workforce. They're the least likely to organize, and they're generally submissive. And the contractors want that. The subcontractors, the employers basically want that. Yeah.
Dorothy, have you heard? Some of these factories are locating there and hiring these young people. They're not allowed to go to school.
Right.
What's the average education, do you think, of any of these people that are working in these factories?
One of the videos that I viewed said that the children or the young women might have had third grade education, some of them as high as 6th grade, but very, very little.
And if they're working 10 or 12 hours a day, there isn't going to be much room for,
no time for
school.
And that's 7 days a week many times. And Kathy Lee's handbags are being made in China now. And those were some of the shops, this latest report that I got, Made in China, tells about a young woman who got 19 cents for the 100 straps that she sewed for the handbags.
19 cents for 100
for
straps.
the 100. And their requirements are usually piecework, but when it figures out they've worked 10 hours a day, then how much they get. Their housing and their food in China is usually subtracted before they get their paycheck. And in they were able to visit 3 of the factories that made Kathy Lee products. And in those factories, some of the workers had not even been paid for 3 months. Sometimes they're required to pay to even get the job. And if they're found out that they talked to the people that were visiting, they very possibly would lose their jobs.
And I'm sure if they tried to organize, as you mentioned, into a union, they would be fired.
Right. The few people that do actually opt to take the reins in organizing or attempting to organize the workers are immediately singled out and fired.
And I suppose, I mean, I hate to say this, but I assume in some countries they could even be killed.
That's certainly the case up until recently with the pro-democracy movement in Indonesia. Indonesia is one of the most egregious violators of human rights, the Suharto regime and so forth, up until just recently. But there's also a historical context to this. These companies Nike, Walmart, J.C. Penney, whoever. These companies actually set up shop in South Korea.
Right.
And Taiwan and Hong Kong. When these employees did organize, did form unions, the companies left. The companies moved to Vietnam, to Indonesia, to China, where the governments keep the citizenry in line more so and don't allow the labor organizing that these workers had previously asked for.
Well, Dorothy, is the church itself involved in these countries in the third world as witness, or what is their role in some of these places?
I don't know that I can really say for sure, other than that they're there as mission workers. In China, it is a Christian church, and they also are subject to some persecution and government controls. And the Christians said they try to keep the laws and follow the regulations so that they will not be persecuted.
So you don't know. Let's say, in Latin America, the church is very strong.
Yes.
I mean, is the church doing anything to either of your knowledge to ameliorate the situation in any way, especially in Latin America? Any idea? Is there some kind of
I know that the
church
United
movement
Methodists
to improve the workers' conditions?
I know that the United Methodists have helped people in the southern part of the United States who lost their jobs to Mexico to organize and help them get retrained and help them find jobs. I don't know exactly what they've done along that line in Central America, though we have missionaries that are working there and working with the people. And as a result of the hurricanes, there have been tremendous response for going in to help the people that lost their homes, probably lost their jobs. And I've often wondered what's happened with all the mudslides and everything to these people.
Well, let me ask you a different question. What about the political leadership in this country? Have either of you been in touch with, for example, our U.S. senators or members of the House or the President's office about what's going on?
When I first got involved with being asked to do a report on child labor, one of the contacts I made was to Senator Tom Harkin's office. And I got a whole stack of books from him relating to child labor. And it talks about the sweatshops and how the children are doing the labor, why children get involved in that kind of a situation.
So all these
why
are the books
families
that,
sell their children to labor, and then one that talks about the codes of conduct that apparel industries are supposed to follow.
Well, let me just ask you something. I mean, here we've got these books put out by the U.S. Department of Labor, and we've got Senator Harkin involved, and he's pretty close to the president and the vice president. And yet these conditions are still going on in the world without seemingly, much interruption. Or are we just wrong? Or is there actually progress being made here?
Well, there is the President's Council on Sweatshops, which just, I believe, signed an agreement in October, if I'm not mistaken, of last month. And it doesn't really matter what you have on paper.
Right.
A law is only as good as its administration that enforces it. So you can make all sorts of assertions that you're going to make the world a better place, you're going to make the labor conditions better for the people in these countries, but without enforcement, without constant monitoring, these laws are of no value. These regulations and partnerships.
So this is going to just continue until something.
And Liz Claiborne is one of the executive leaders of that committee, and her shops in Central America are some of the ones, they're Korean-owned, where her products are made, that are some of the worst situations also.
Well, what can a shopper do? I mean, you go to the store, you want to buy, a pair of pants or a blouse. Increasingly things are made in third world, particularly Latin America. What's a consumer supposed to do?
Well, The crux of the People's Right to Know campaign is focusing once again on Walmart, because you had previously stated they're the most successful company in a monetary sense based on last year's profits. So we want to get that company to reform. And most of the people who do their shopping at Walmart are working class people. They have an average income of around $25,000 a year. I'm sure that they would empathize with the plight of these workers in these given countries, that it's only just that they be given a decent wage. We're not talking about a wage that's superfluous, where they're going to be getting all sorts of, they're going to be able to go out and buy stereos and automobiles. This is something to live on. It's simply something to live on. And we're asking that Walmart and the Walton I believe it's the Walton family, they are the second richest family in the world. They can certainly pay a living wage.
So what's going to be the focus here? This is we're airing this beginning of December, and people have until Christmas, and there's going to be a lot of shopping done at Walmart. So what do you folks aim to do to have some kind of holiday shopping with a conscience, particularly at Walmart?
Dorothy?
Well, we have passed out cards. I had about 1,000 of them. I probably have a couple hundred left for people to carry with them to say that they care and to give to the store managers in any store that they shop. A year ago, I shared this with a store in Lamar's, where the lady was very interested in any of the information because she tried not to buy from sweatshops. As far as Walmart, 3 of us went to Walmart in October in our own little type of protest and stood out in the parking lot and
Is this in Cedar Rapids?
We did this in Storm Lake.
Storm Lake.
After our United Methodist Women's State meeting, to try and say that we felt strongly about this situation and that we wanted people to do that. I'm hoping to find some people in the Cedar Rapids area that we can do something to recognize the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I think is the right title.
That's December 10th,
December
correct?
10th.
Okay, so there's going to be some sort of action at
I'm in the
Walmart,
hopes that I can do
leafleting,
something.
Okay, well, we'll run your how to contact you on the screen after the show. And what about here in Iowa City, James?
In Iowa City on December 10th, that's once again the anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights. We'll be gathering at the Walmart in Iowa City from 3:30 until 5:30 p.m. In order to pass out the leaflets, the shoppers' cards that the shoppers can take into the manager of the stores, the cashiers, and let them know that they want to be able to buy products that are made under safe and humane conditions and the workers are paid a livable and decent wage. And there are also postcards with the same design. And on the back, we're going to hand these out as well. We ask that the customers sign their name and send it to David Glass, who's the CEO of Walmart. And hopefully, we may even have a visit from Santa Claus.
Really?
We're not sure, but...
well, that would be interesting.
We
now,
passed out the cards to Walmart, and I know a number of the women, in our meeting in October, I know of a number of the women sent the cards to the Walmart company, and one woman wrote a letter and had an answer back, basically saying reports like this that the National Labor Committee put out are not right, that they do have a code of conduct and they do follow it.
James, I understand there's also going to be something on the weekend after December 10th.
Yeah, on Saturday the 12th, we are going to have another protest, another demonstration at the Walmart.
Or possibly Sunday the 13th, I heard both.
One of those 2 days, perhaps both those days, because that's when the people are really out shopping, when we can create a certain level of...
Dorothy, how were you received? Did you talk to anybody that was shopping in this Walmart on October 3rd?
We had one man who came up. We were in a grassy area near the parking lot, which we thought was public space, so that we wouldn't get arrested or anything like that. We had one man who come up to us and talked to us and seemed to know about labor issues and was aware of some of the things in Central America. We had a man that we thought was one of the managers at Walmart stop as we were leaving and ask for our flyer, and so we gave him a brochure.
I mean, did any shoppers say, you're right, maybe I should watch out where these clothes are made or anything like that?
No, some of the women at our meeting wrote back, and one had, surveyed a Walmart store and a J.C. Penney store and said Carter's was the only brand she could find that was made in America.
Mm-hmm. James, have you ever been leafleting and people said, you know, this is something to think about. Maybe I shouldn't be buying these products. I mean,
Well, you have different camps of people. You have some who are quite concerned, you know, from the get-go, and others who become somewhat defensive and use the rationale, well, you know, these people need these jobs and we don't want to take them away. Well, this campaign does not want to take jobs away from people in the third world. It wants to hopefully give them some sort of a living wage by moving Walmart in the right direction. But we've also had people who are not astonished in the least bit.
do they keep shopping? Do they just not care? I mean, is that, do you think sort of the general attitude that people have enough to worry about, that they can't be thinking about what people in the rest of the world are making, even if it's 10 cents an hour and living in horrible conditions, so that we can wear Gap T-shirts or sweaters?
Well, we don't want to boycott Walmart.
Right.
And I think that the most important thing that we can possibly do is to get this situation into the public discourse and get it on people's minds so that they can become conscious of this.
Well, well put. All right. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on tonight. Dorothy Higdon of Cedar Rapids, the United Methodist Women. James Tracy, University of Iowa graduate student from the National Labor Committee. The name of the show tonight has been Holiday Shopping with a Conscience. And I would simply like to end the show with a very small question perhaps you might want to think about as you're going out holiday shopping. As the bracelets say that many of the young people are wearing, what would Jesus do? Thank you and good night.